Stop! Hi everyone, my name is Artur Krasiński, and for over 10 years I've been observing and explaining how technology influences us, people and society. I'm greeting you from the studio inside the Innovation Campus in Warsaw, Poland. The podcast series is called Early Adopters Nook, where we invite innovative startups to talk about their product and how it's changing the world. My today's guest is Hubert Guzera, founder of Placeme. How are you, Hubert?
Good morning.
Good morning. And my first question is, what is Placeme and what you guys doing?
There's a short story to that and a long story. And let me start with the short story. So,
stage is yours.
in a nutshell, you probably know Google Analytics.
Yep,
and you probably know other tools that help understand clients in the e-commerce world.
ProWeek.
So thanks to that, we know exactly how the customers entered our website, how much time they spend there, what products were they interested in, and many, many more. But the e-commerce is just a part of the retail nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
We also have offline stores,
Yeah,
the brick and mortar
sure.
stores on the corners of our streets, and still 70 to 80% of sales are done there.
Mm-hmm.
And think about comparing how much info we have about those e-commerce customers and the offline customers. There's a huge gap between that. Of course. So what we do, and this is a short story, we fill in this gap. We deliver analytics about the customers that you have in the offline world, so in your stores, in your buildings, on the streets of our cities. And we explain to FMCG and retail companies where you can find the people that you want to target your product to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, also there's a long story because it's not as easy as it sounds, right? We benefit from the change in technology that now we live in era of information, era of data. But there's a lot of data out there which is unstructured, which is chaotic. So we simply make sense out of it. Now we approach this niche because nobody was really interested in the offline world, and it was a huge...
Really?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, maybe... it wasn't the fact that they were not interested, but it's extra hard, let's say. Now, the data that we collect, this is coming from very different sources, and you needed to blend it together. The data also, when we think about the offline world, it's geographic. It's a special niche of data science that is not very popular. And then there's plenty of data, so you have big data. And you also need to understand how this technology works for the benefit of your customers. So you have this business acumen. And if we consider those four things, that you have a data, you have geoanalytics, you have a big data, and then you have business solutions, actually combining those four together is a really niche solution. But it's a niche in a sense that it's required by everybody, but nobody is kind of able to do it on its own. That's where we come in. So what we do as a part of our business, we aggregate data from many sources, and the primary source is the data from mobile devices.
Operators.
So no, not from mobile operators. There's devices.
Okay.
Yes, that's a huge difference. Probably we're gonna talk about it in a second. But we collect the data from mobile devices because our devices know where we are, and they
broadcast information.
Exactly, broadcast this information to the world. We are one of many receivers of that information, and we use it not to track a single person, but rather to understand how the large masses of people, cohorts as we call them, are moving throughout the cities or using services. And thanks to that, for example, if you pinpoint on a given store or a given area in our application, you can understand how many people were there, but also why they came there. And that's the most important thing. That's in a short words. What we now, there's a technology, but the very important thing is also how it's being used. And in our line of business, the primary uses for our technology is in marketing and in expansion. So the marketing is like a huge word. If you look around, there's brands everywhere, right? And think about it this way. If you go into a store and you see a Coca-Cola fridge, it's not a coincidence. If you walk into if you see a billboard, it's not a coincidence that it's there. It's a decision that somebody made. And if you think about how many those decisions were made and how much money were behind those decisions, how much investment was put into those marketing activities, then you see there's a huge room, huge push for it to be done effectively. And how you do it effectively by understanding if this marketing targets your customers. That's where we come in. So we help FMCG and retail companies target their marketing presence, billboards, stores to be in the right place, because that's the key.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so please explain me, enlighten me with one thing. How did you guys collect the information? I mean, do you have your own devices?
No.
Okay.
No. So
because as far as I understand, you can have like, some kind of transmitter or receiver in the mall, for example, but on the street?
Yeah, I understand your question,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a question that we that's usually the first question from our clients. Where do we get the data? And the answer is really, really simple. We use so many services right now and so many applications that our data is everywhere. As I mentioned, we live in the age of data, and there's this old saying that you probably know, that if you don't pay for the product, you are the product.
You are the product, yeah.
Exactly. So globally, there's plenty of applications that are free, but they are free because they commercialize and monetize on our data.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably know the things that you can go in front of certain store and receive the ad about them.
Of course.
So we get the same data because we aggregate the data that is coming primarily from the mobile devices about the location of the client. The data is being anonymized, and that's a minor switch between what advertisers use and what we use, because we don't need to know that you went there. We want to understand that there was a person.
Mm-hmm.
And we buy this data and work on them on a statistical level. For us, it's kind of like we were on the street and did a lot of service on people, so asking them who they are and trying to build on top of that, because at the end of the day, we're data scientists, we're statisticians, we're researchers, and it's a market information for us. It's we don't use that for advertisement, but the data is coming from a large array of sources that monetize on our data. And I understand the question is often asked because it seems weird that we have this kind of data, but the reality is that there's plenty of data about us going around the world. It's not about us in a sense that this person, it's anonymized, it's going in different aggregates. But the problem with this data is that when you look at this mobile devices location data in practice, it's very hard to make sense out of it. You have one beep here, one beep there, and another one there. So what our solution is we like to call it's a refinery to the oil, because many people are saying that data is the oil of the 21st century, right? But the point is, you can't use oil without refinery, and this is what we do. So we take this data that wouldn't make sense to the customers if they were to receive it on their own, and we make sense out of it, and that's what we do.
Okay, yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, like, I've seen some articles about, for example, in Poland there's a company called Selective.
Yes,
they are very, very powerful in terms of data. They can say very easily, for example, how many Ukrainians are in Poland, because they know how many devices are in the market in Poland with the Ukrainian language as a primary. So this is something like very logical for me. That's like people collecting information, people analyzing. But yeah, sometimes there's like second thought that how this is possible. I mean, because I believe in age of RODO in Poland is, like GDPR in Poland called RODO, and many people are very afraid of your own data, how many people can look up and just analyze. So we just as a humans want to be sure that, or just think of us that we have this possibility to be in control of our data, which is of course not true, because we very freely give away this data on a daily level, daily basis on social media. But when you ask people, do you think you can broadcast right now some very valuable information? Probably 99% will say, of course not, because I just do not touch my phone. And there's like no. They don't know how much information is right now transferred into this into the world but of course, from other point of view, is also analyzing. And perhaps some people know how these Google Maps are working, right? This is like how Android is working. But yeah, so that was my question.
I think that the concerns are very justified, but the problem lies somewhere else, I guess. Now, what we do might sound kind of, excessive, scary. I'm not sure what the word I would use because I'm so accustomed to the technology. But the thing is that when you look at it from our perspective, we talk about this mobile data, and you have this instant brain thought that we know where you are. And that's a very excessive word for that. Because first of all, what we know is that there was some device that was there here right now, and then there was somewhere else. Now, we're here in this office, and if we look on this open space, and I were to say there's a device that we track right there, I still have no idea who that is, right? And I would need to follow everybody just to, kind of a check if they were there, then there, because sometimes you have a half an hour difference between the signals, and kind of make a lot of effort in order to find out who they really are. That's why in the ruling of GDPRs, the location data itself is not treated as a personal data, because if you're in a very crowded place, the fact that you're there isn't telling who you are, right? It's only with combination with other data that, for example, your demographics, your name, your email, that is dangerous. And this is a secret to why we are able to work quite freely without worrying much about the compliance from GDPR. Because at the very first stage, when we get the data from the providers, we anonymize it. We can't trace back it to this individual person. And it's kind of funny because when you talk to our clients, they often ask us, can you tell us what is the demographics of the person? And I say, well, I can tell you if that device went to yoga, but I can't tell you
how old is it?
How old? Exactly. So it's kind of a counterintuitive, because many people think that yoga is more advanced information and demographic is not. For us, it's the other way around. And I think that actually GDPR was very good for us, meaning that we are actually on this kind of ethical side of the data business, because we anonymize data, we only work on aggregates. At the end of the day, you never, in our application, you receive the information on an individual person, but rather a statistics that in this place, there's X amount of people, right? But there were many providers who were trying to do what I just mentioned. So they were trying to merge that information with the email, with an address, and kind of sell those packages. And I can remember the word before the GDPR. I can see it now. And I think that getting rid of those providers was really a very good step. So I completely understand those concerns as justifiable. Now, the only problem is that there are still tech giants out there that actually have all of that data quite easily. They don't need to combine it because Google, Facebook, we gave that information to them. But, that's a topic of a large discussion in the US, how to treat those tech giants, because the power that you have there is quite large. And in a nutshell, well, the problem is not with the mobile location data alone and knowing where devices are. It's about knowing knowing where I was, knowing my name, and knowing what I said to Alexa, right? And combining those information, that's dangerous.
That's right. I visited your website and I clicked on several links, and you offer very different kind of services. Can you briefly tell about them? I mean,
Sure. Well, the reason that we offer broad array of products is because, well, you have this technology, and I mentioned that it's very hard to do, but once you have it, there's actually various things that you want to do in offline world, because, there are different problems that you have with your presence in this brick and mortar world. So what we started with, and that was our core product and still is like the largest in terms of revenue, is Placeme, which is basically a tool for you to understand when to place your next store or location or branch of your business. And in this application, you can basically do a kind of a due diligence understanding exactly what the metrics are for given locations. So how many people live around, what are the demographics, how many people visit that place, is there competition nearby, and so on and so on. And this is helpful for the large brands because the retail is growing really fast, and with the aspirations of certain players to grow by hundreds of stores annually, well, you actually have to, do it effectively. And what the word was before we entered this stage was that often you simply went there, you simply looked around as an employee, and it took ages. And then writing a report for the board,
sending photos.
Exactly. It was a very manual process, but now it's structured. It's objective, and we actually are fueling the growth of brands like Dino, like Carrefour, that are one of the fastest growing. Netto is becoming one of the largest retailers because you need to be efficient in that, and also you need to be objective with that. The problem with this manual approach is also that you can have one person going somewhere and saying, well, this looks nice, and the other, well, I don't believe in that. And it's in your head, it's very subjective. So that was our core product. But then after creating this product, we started to receive inquiries about other things we might do. So, for example, there are billboards, the billboards which are a huge part of our reality, whether we like it or not. And the question is, how many people saw the billboard? But also, there's this is something that actually advertisers try to answer on their own and partially succeeded to. But there's also another question. So, if I have one billboard there, another billboard there, is it being viewed by the same person or two different people, right? Because if we put 5 billboards in a consecutive order on the road, you can imagine that it doesn't make much sense, right? Because you're just wasting money, right? So how this billboard setup works, and that was another product that we introduced for you to understand. It's called monitoring, for you to understand how your media are working. So are they converting? Are they being seen by somebody? Also, it goes in regard to seeing how your competition is performing, right? Because you can as well put this marker on your competitor's store and see whether they're having an influx of people or they are losing clients. So on the local level, it gives you a lot of insights. But also there are marketing tools, as I mentioned. The fact that there's a fridge somewhere is not a coincidence. So you have FMCG companies that are selling to stores, and the stores are the clients. So they need to kind of understand which store is good, which is bad, because that goes in line with the investment. The same, for example, with restaurants. If you think about the brewery, you need to understand which brewery is good, which bar is good and can sell premium products and which not. So then we get the data in products Target. The product is called Target. We get the data on the outlets, as we call them, points of sale, and we assess them, saying that, well, this is a place that there's a lot of people, but they are usually old. And that gives you an insight that maybe it's not in line with my strategy, and I don't want to sell my product there, so you kind of skip it off. And there's another place that is good, so you send a sales representative there and work on your marketing in that given location. And the last product is something that is very similar to that, but it works the other way around. Because in a second ago, I said that we are assessing stores.
Yes.
But try to do a reverse on that. So imagine that you have a strategy that you want to target young people who are interested in sports. Now the question is where to find them. And this is this kind of reverse search, which which is very much in line on how the marketing department works. The difference between those products is that this product is targeted toward marketing, while the previous one was targeted towards sales. They have this different slight in differences in methodology. So we get the brief from the clients saying that we are interested in people who like sports, and we try to pinpoint them in our databases based on their behavioral profile. So, for example, as I mentioned, if you go to yoga, well, that tells you something about it. If you go to vegan restaurants, we can tell something about you based on that. So then we try to find those criteria that you need to fulfill in order to become the segment. And then we see where you were. This is very good because sometimes the problem is that our target groups are behaving completely not in line with our expectations. So would you imagine that, I don't know, young people are going to shopping malls?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there aren't. Maybe there are. Who knows? It also allows you to do this kind of, out-of-the-box marketing. Like if your target group is sitting on the banks of the Vistula River in the evenings, maybe you should do your marketing there and not in the center of the streets when they are not interested in the places that they are not interested in and not present. So and it's the product is needed because a large portion of the products right now are being more and more specialized. So each product right now has a target group. Each product is dedicated towards certain segment with values, branding, and communication that is targeted very much towards it. But if you have this kind of specialization, you can't put it everywhere, right? And we actually managed to do that in the e-commerce world, as I mentioned, because you have digital ads allows you to target very specifically your marketing towards one segment. But we are helping to do the same in the offline world, where it's much harder.
Mm-hmm. Can you really measure the outdoor? Because it crossed my mind that it's like, of course, I can imagine that you can say that there's like many people outside moving toward your billboard, but actually, what is the method? How can I be sure that this information, this message, this billboard, is seen by this mass of people? Install cameras on their heads.
I understand. So now I'm just if you get me started on technology, I can talk for ages. So that's why I'm
no problem. Take your time.
I'm doing this pause just to not to overcrowd the discussion with technical jargon. However, the problem is in what we do. The largest problem is that you have the X amount of devices in an area. But the thing is, how does that translate to the actual number of people? Because we don't get the signal from every device, right? We get a subsample. And, there are many factors that influence how many devices we see in a given area. Being, for example, if there are more younger people, the more likely they are to have a smartphone. In big cities, you are more likely to have a smartphone. Also, there are certain places where we take this device out and it's more likely to send a signal. So there's a lot of, things that you have to take into consideration. And this is what actually makes our technology valuable, because I guess everybody can, get the data and count by number of devices, but it's not the information that everybody is looking for. It's the number of people that they are looking for. And we need to be super precise about that, and it's hard, but it's what we do majority of time, because at the end of the day, this information is so easy to verify. We had actually a client that said, "Oh, so you're telling that there's this amount of people going onto the street on Wednesday. So next Wednesday, I'm going there. I'm going to spend 2 hours, count the people, and see if
Really?
it's right." Yes, exactly. So that's the thing, because usually when we have this process of showing our product to the clients, the first they do is that they actually select in our application their home, because your home best. And if we are saying that there's a lot of people, they can verify it's really a lot of people. If it's not a lot of people, then the same way. Also, you can compare it to, for example, you have a store, so you can compare it to the number that from, I don't know, cameras or other systems to count people. So it's very easy to verify. And when you ask if it's possible to measure the out of home, then the answer is, well, yes, but with a certain degree of precision, because we can never get the number exactly right. It's always, there's some fluctuation. But the thing is that in the large scheme of things, you're not looking for information whether there was 100 or 101 people. You're looking for difference that this billboard is being seen by 101 people and the other is seen by 1,000 on 10,000 people. That's the differences we're talking about there, and that's where it makes sense. Now, the problem that you mentioned also is very interesting, because in case of out of home, it also goes. There's multiple factors that if I'm going on this side of the road, then I'm able to see the billboard, and if I'm going to the other side, I'm not able to. And also there's the height of the billboard itself, height of the building, the buildings nearby. Well, to be perfectly honest, the technology is not there yet, right? Also because there's now those factors can't be introduced in calculations, and we do even in more advanced models, but in other areas. But the thing is that if you're paying 1,000 or 2,000 zlotys for the billboard, you not really want to pay 2,000 zlotys to analyze if it works, right? There's a certain budget to what we can do. But there are actually areas when companies want to do this very advanced modeling. So, for example, we're working with Carrefour, and probably format Carrefour Express. There, the precision of information is really, really important, because in a convenience format, whether you're working on one side of the street or another is a huge difference. So now, few meters of precision makes a huge difference. And this is, for example, and the investment in the store is much larger than investment in a billboard. So,
of course.
So that's where, for example, those models are being utilized. Or, for example, we're working with actually a wholesale retailer that in an area where also investment in a new wholesale market is, several millions. And then the level of analytics is much, much larger. So the advanced analytics is out there, but not exactly in the area that you just mentioned.
Okay. Thank you for explaining to me. What is the process of building a shopping mall currently like? I mean, like, if I would love to build some building, and populate it with the clients, can you help me with it? I mean, like, can you hand me information, analytics, and it is a data-driven process?
It should be.
It should be, okay?
It should be. Now, interesting story is that when we created Placeme for the first time, our core feature was that you could specify the location that you wanted. So, for example, you could say the criteria that you want a place when there are at least 2,000 people passing by every day and no competition. And then it said, well, this is the building. And we went to the clients with that solution, and they said, well, it's kind of useless, because you can't place your store exactly what you want. There's a real estate market, and the supply is limited. So it often goes like this, that you have this opportunity, and you have to assess yes or no. And you're not looking at the map and saying, maybe I want to go there, but rather getting a lead on investment and then assessing whether the investment is worth it or not. That completely changes the way. Now, the second thing, which is very interesting about the retailers, we tried discussing ROI with them and how to maximize the return on investment, and it doesn't really work that way, because the most important, it's not about, when you look at the strategy of retailers right now, it's not about maximizing ROI on a store. It's about maximizing the extent of the store. So you might want to go somewhere when there's, less money to be made, but you want to be kind of everywhere, because it's the scale that matters. So the biggest thing is not for the ROI to be maximum. It's for the ROI to be there, because we don't want the stores that are, have negative cash flows. Yeah. And that's all there is. So the discussion is not about maximizing the ROI, it's about avoiding failures. And there are certain, also the thing is that you asked if we can help. Yes, we can help, but the thing is that our technology is there for, 4 years, and the stores are being located for the hundreds of years. So we kind of entering a place where everybody has its methods. So we kind of rather aid than replace the methods that the retailers were used, because they have this aggregate experience. They know their brands, they know their customers. So we don't replace them, we aid them. And we aid them by delivering the data that they need to make the decision by their own experience. And when you think about it, how it used to work before there was Placeme, let's say, is that I mentioned the manual process. Somebody was simply going there, counting the people for 2 hours on the street, and then maybe looking around the buildings. If there were a lot of buildings, so maybe a lot of people lived there. There were actually a retailer that was counting, those post office boxes because that correlated to the number of families that lived somewhere, and it was very manual process. But it was very time consuming. But at the end of the day, you didn't have the certainty because maybe those flats that you just counted are empty. Maybe nobody lives there. Maybe you were there when it was cold, so normally the traffic is much larger. Maybe you didn't walk far enough to see the competition. So the process was very long, but it was still doubtful. And that's where we come in. We give the data that is being objective, and it doesn't replace the seeing the place with your own eyes, but you can. But we can show you the data that you wouldn't be able to get on your own with enough precision. And second, we can also tell you that maybe it's not worth going there at all as the first step, right? Because, just to clear the pipeline with something that, wouldn't work. And this is a secret about us working with retailers. You shouldn't think about this, that retailers are using this black box that simply tells them where the stores are. It's about aiding the process. It's about helping make decision. It's about filling in the gaps. But it's not this AI that replaced all human reason there. And I think that also makes it very interesting because at the end of the day, the customer doesn't need Placeme. His life would be much harder, but they can do it on their own. But they still see value in our tool, and that's what's great.
Awesome. You work with the biggest players on the Polish market, including Empik, Spar, Netto, Eurocash, Dino, Carrefour. How do you win such clients? How do you convince them to work with you? Is it a question of price, your skills, experience?
Well,
what's your secret sauce?
Well, usually we don't think about it this way. That when you say it this way, well, it seems interesting that we actually work with majority of retailers in Poland. So I would say that you could say that our tool is a standard for the sector in Poland. But the thing is that I don't think there's a secret sauce to winning them, meaning that, well, I'm very charismatic or we have a killer pitch decks. It's really about the value that your tool provides and its value. And if you deliver value, it's all there is. Now, we deliver value because of a simple fact that I mentioned previously in our conversation. So the fact that it's valuable information, but you can't really do it on your own. I mean, you can, but it's so time consuming. It's so niche and requires so much competence that actually it's very far away from, the core business of retailers, right? And if you gather, talented people like we did and that know this thing, then actually you can do it and then give it to our customers, and have the scale. Now, so I think it's all about value, but to kind of a deep dive on that, we have this kind of, as a startup, we have this pedigree that we're not exactly Polish. I mean, when we founded the company, we were invited to Lisbon for accelerations and did the acceleration programs there. We are invested by Portuguese funds, now also by the Polish funds, but we started with the Portuguese. And I believe that it was a very interesting experience for us because at the time the Portuguese ecosystem was much more mature. It still is. So it had much more experience, much more alumni founders who could share their experience. And the biggest difference that I saw between Polish startups and the Portuguese mentality was that the Portuguese were very much customer driven, very much. So it doesn't matter for them. It didn't matter if you're doing a breakthrough tech. Like, does it help the client? If you can have a hack, a really simple solution that helps the client, well, good. We can earn money on that because it delivers value. Ask your client what the problem is and then solve this problem. Yeah. That's all there is to business. Now, compared to Poland, I guess that we are very excited by tech, but are not really excited by how the customers would use it. So, and I think that switch in mentality, because we also had it at the very beginning, we're excited by what the possibilities that we can give, was a huge factor for us that, well, you can have all there is in terms of technology, but if you don't solve the problem to the clients, so what do you do? Exactly. And I mentioned the example that we built a feature that was completely usable for our clients despite the fact that it was technologically more advanced. So it's the best example for us that you have to actually listen to the clients and solve the problems. And that's the secret to winning them, simply. If you think about it this way, like if there's a problem and there's a
tool, a company to
solve this problem, and this problem is painful enough for somebody to pay it, then you have a business. All there is.
Simply as that. Okay, how's the pandemic affected your customers and business growth?
It was okay in a nutshell, but it was interesting from thinking about it right now, because you have this pipeline of projects that you are discussing with your clients, and imagine that there's a pandemic and you erase it, completely erase it. Like, nobody wants to invest, nobody wants to put money in new projects, but then very quickly the pipeline gets replaced with other projects because the priorities changed. But there were a lot of things that the company felt that they need to do in order to survive in this new world. So it was kind of it was like it's very fast switch that we basically replaced all our topics that we were running on to different topics in a very short time. But then we actually started helping the clients in those new areas, which I think were exciting for us, because when you think about the world before the pandemic, you could say, as a typical client that we were talking to, that you might know your business if you were there long enough. So often we were talking to our clients, we were talking about the value in data-driven expansion, and they said, well, there's no value in data-driven expansion because everybody goes to shopping malls. So all I need to do is when there's a shopping mall being built, I need to place my store there. All there is. And now if you think about what the pandemic did to our shopping behaviors, it completely changed it. So now you couldn't go on a strategy to simply be in the shopping malls because are the shopping malls still feasible? That's the question that everybody is asking themselves right now. Would the retail go to those street locations, as they call them, or maybe it will migrate to e-commerce? There are so many questions out there. So you were this manager in a company that used to do it your way for several years, and now you're in new reality. And in that situation, a company helps you to understand what happened to your clients. It's very helpful when you think about it. So it was a really time for growth for us, both in terms of of revenue, but also the excitement for the projects that we have, because we still like what we do, and it's fun to do projects that are cool. Because, for example, you had a retailer that is losing clients, and the question is, are they staying at home or are they going to competition? Because if you lose your revenues and you might intuitively think, well, people aren't purchasing anymore, but maybe you're doing something wrong in your reaction to pandemic. Maybe you're simply losing on our customers. Like the case of Tesco. The Tesco was losing customers because their profile was not in line with customers' expectations anymore. And you can say it day to day, but at the end of the day, you simply lose out on them. So, for example, there were supermarkets who were wondering where their customers are, and we did a run on them. There were people thinking like how the pandemics and the, let's say, the regulation from government affected the customer behavior. So we delivered the data. So it was a time of very exciting projects. And I think that when you think about our clients, how it affected them, it kind of put doubt in everything they do, right? So you might have a strategy beforehand, but right now you are wondering how the world would look like after the pandemic. There are variety of reactions and strategies that companies have right now. Some, put emphasis on online. Some think they need to relocate. Some think that everything will go back to normal. But here we are, kind of trying to make that data-driven and not intuition-driven.
How do you see your company developing over the next 12 months? Let's see how's the future for the data place.
So there are plans, and we have ambitious plans, and I think that this would be a crucial year for us, because now we are a startup that is, kind of grown up on the Polish world. So we were self-sufficient. Now we had an investment and we invested a lot, so we still have burn. But at the end of the day, we can earn money on our own. It's not, we're not dependent on investors anymore. And but we can have this, cool life in Poland. But also we have this thing that we have really exciting technology that is unique, kind of. Because if you look at other countries, it's a category that is still being born. So it's not like, we copied a solution that was already well and existing in Silicon Valley or in Berlin, but already creating something from the ground up. And now the next logical conclusion would be, if we have something that works here, and Germany, France, UK doesn't have it, well, let's try export it, right? And that's what we are right now focused to do. The international expansion is not an easy task, because it's not only about providing your products. It's different culture, it's different approach. It's here right now we have this kind of a brand, but we don't have that in abroad. And this is what the team is focused all about, right? There are a lot of changes that we did in order to make it happen. For example, we changed the name, we kind of rebranded, we structure our products differently, and let's hope that in a year, and the next following years, we would be kind of a European player, let's say, that we would, you wouldn't think about us only in Polish context, but rather European at least.
Awesome. Thank you very much. My today's guest was Hubert Guzera, founder of the Data Place. Wonderful conversation. Thank you for being with me. I hope that our listeners and viewers will be your clients in the future, or using your technology. Once again, my name is Artur Krasiński, and this is podcast about the early adopters technology and the change. Please like, share, leave a comment below. This will help us to get the broadest audience. Thank you very much once again, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Boom. Wow. Stop. What?